Hello everyone, Jordan back here with another review for you. Today we're looking at the Logitech G910 Orion Spectrum gaming keyboard. I looked at the G213 before a little while ago, which featured their rubber dome keys, and from that video I found that a lot of people asked me to look at one of the keyboards that featured their Roma G switches, so alas, the G910 here for you to see today. Now this is kind of the higher end of their keyboard range. This keyboard also features 9 macro keys and a whole host of other things as well that of course we'll cover as we go along. So the main things to cover alongside the macro keys, we've also got RGB lighting. We have got a phone dock as well, which actually syncs with a ARX app, which is available on Android and iOS. Personally for me, I didn't test this because an app for a keyboard just for me is not something that I'd ever use. So I would recommend checking out another video if you want to look at that in a bit more detail. I will touch on the pros and cons of that feature later on in the video though. We have got media keys on this keyboard as well as a volume roller, which is nice to see. Certainly better than the G213 that just had buttons. Now something that seems to be brought up on pretty much every keyboard is the picture on the front of the box is a generic US layout that they use just because it's simple to print the same picture on every box. The actual keyboard I've got inside is a UK layout, so that's why the keyboard that's actually inside and on the box differ. So this time we're going to just jump straight into it and show you the keyboard because all that you get included in the box is just some documents. So here it is in all its glory, the G910. Oddly for me, the familiar really reminds me of my G510 from back in the day, as I mentioned in the last review actually from Logitech. And it just feels comfortable. You know, it has the really kind of familiar feel from my old keyboard. It's just built really well. And yeah, it just definitely gives me a real throwback feel, obviously with the new modern day additions. So first let's look on the bottom. We've got some rubber pads that are obviously going to stop your keyboard from slipping about when you're gaming and typing. Now the cable for this is a standard cable, it's not braided, which you kind of really would expect for a gaming product of this price. And you've got an oddly thick USB port as well that will go of course into your PC. Now there isn't any additional pass-throughs or any audio capabilities for this keyboard either, so literally just one USB on this one. So starting at the bottom of the keyboard, working our way up, got this really cool G910 logo that actually illuminates depending on what colour settings you've got on your keyboard. Nice little touch, I really quite like that. Definitely improves to the aesthetics. Looks great in the night as well. So the left hand side of the keyboard is very busy, so to speak. There's a lot going on. So on the left hand side we've got 5 macro keys. And then above the F1 to F4 we've got an additional 4, so obviously 9 macro keys. Then what you can actually do is use the M1, 2 and 3 buttons at the very top left to then change banks. So you basically got 3 banks of 9 macro keys for a total of 27 macros. You can assign these to different profiles or games if you wish, so you could have say one for GTA, one for Battlefield, one for League of Legends. So you can easily switch between them nice and easily, or even just one for a workflow, maybe for editing, one for gaming, and then one for maybe DJing or something like that. Also you've got an illuminated G logo as well, which I really do like. What I think is quite nice personally is to have that as well as the G910 logo lit differently to the rest of the keyboard, just makes it a little bit different. Now one thing you might notice on the WASD keys and also the arrow keys, there's a small, what looks like an indentation, but it's actually just printed on the keycaps. It actually provides a different feel as well, so you can easily find the keys without looking. It also gives a nice aesthetic as well. Another familiar feature on the G910 is the ability to turn off the Windows key, so obviously great when you're playing a game, do stop accidentally minimising that game down to the desktop. That's also programmable via the software as well, so you can customise the different buttons and features to your own preference. And also by that you've also got a button to disable all the illumination that's on the keyboard. Now on the top right hand side is personally one of my favourite parts of the keyboard, all the media controls. So first of all you've got the mute and then a lovely scroll wheel. It is quite sensitive though, so you need to be careful. You can ramp up in volume to 100% really quite easily, so yeah, take it easy when you're using that. Then above that you've got play, pause, stop and previous and next track. The play and pause is also indented so you can find that without looking, which is also nice. A very sleek look to the top right hand side of the keyboard. I definitely prefer this over the G213 that had the different size and shape buttons. This is a lot more elegant solution. So the very top center of the keyboard is where we're going to find the ARC dock. This is basically where you can put your phone in and then link to the app for Android and iOS to see a couple of more features like the CPU, GPU and RAM speeds and temperatures. Like I said in the start of the video, if you want to look at that, I'd recommend checking out another video on YouTube. In all honesty, if you're really worried about the temperatures of what you've got in your rig, you'll probably be using a hardware monitor or something like that anyway. Looking at it just as a dock, it's okay. Obviously you don't have any way to charge the phone as it sits on there, so battery life might be a bit of a concern. It can take pretty big phones though. The Samsung S8 Plus with a cracked screen will fit perfectly. Also, I tried my Note 3 and that worked in there fine, so yeah, biggest of phones will fit, no worries. As it's an open dock on each side as well, your phone could fall out quite easily, and unfortunately you can't put it in landscape either, so it's portrait or nothing. So yeah, a feature on the keyboard that personally I'm not really going to use. On an aesthetics note, I do like the way that the sides of the keyboard kind of round off, and then you've got that little supporting plastic bar underneath. It does look metal, but it is plastic, but anyway, it does make it look quite nice. It definitely looks good when it's on your desk. Okay, so taking off a few of the keycaps to look at the Roma G switches underneath. I wouldn't recommend doing that, by the way, but in the name of science, then I will do it for you so you can see. Now, the Roma keys differ quite a bit from a mechanical key, so basically you've got a very small bump at the top. You won't feel this though during gameplay, it's just when you really kind of slowly press the key you can actually notice that little bump there. Then it goes down to a very soft ending to the key press travel, so it's kind of like a mix between the membrane with a little bump at the top. But it is a very nice key to use. As you can see in the video here, it's got like the plastic outer side and then the LED shining through, which is a nice way to do it. If you're wondering how this sounds in practice, let's have a listen. Now we've had a listen, let's have a whip around the software. Now, like a lot of other companies, Logitech uses one piece of software to control all the peripherals, which is really handy. So now this is just going into the macro settings. You can literally set any of the macro keys that I mentioned, the 9 different ones, and then on the 3 different banks as well. So set those to your heart's content. I'm just running through the different options here to see what you can actually do. This is more of a time-consuming thing that you can spend hours on to get it exactly how you want it. But I'm just literally showing you the options that are available. You might notice that this video is a little bit different for the keyboard preview as well. It's actually being shot on a Logitech G910 webcam, so thank you for Logitech for sending that out. I think you'll agree that it's a lot better perspective than what I usually use. Now at the top of the menu we've got all the different games that the software actually detects. You can also add some more in as well. Then you can make custom profiles, which is, maybe you want to use one for Premiere Pro, maybe one for Photoshop. Any piece of software or a game, doesn't matter what it was. You can literally set up a different lighting profile, then also macros to match. On the topic of lighting, you've got preset modes with this one like you do with pretty much any other RGB keyboard. So going through them first, the fixed colour. The white on this one is a little bit green unfortunately, but that's the sacrifice you do make with RGB as I've mentioned in my other reviews. Breathing is pretty self-explanatory, breathes in and out through a different colour, customisable to your preference of course. Now star effect, we've seen this on other RGB keyboards, but Logitech's adaptation is a little bit different. They basically have a star and then a sky colour which you can pick to whatever you fancy. Personally not as great as some of the other ones we've seen, I don't think. They just kind of randomise the colour in just a random location, but this one does the job. Now the colour cycle literally just goes through the entire RGB spectrum. As you can see here, that's rather excessive speed, but it's just to show you how it does it. Just so the video doesn't go on for too long. Color wave, which is pretty much the classic effect. It's what I'm currently rocking on it now. You can change horizontal, vertical, and then center out as well if you wish, but personally for me, left to right is how I rock it. Last one I've got is the key press, obviously reactive on the press of the actual key. Again, you can change the different lightings for that as well, whatever colour you fancy. Then you've got the options to go in different commands, so as you can see that changes a whole selection. Of course you've got customization on that as well. You can make it really psychedelic colours if you want to. Then you can change the macro keys as well, so I think World of Warcraft will be beneficial for that, so maybe you could have a different colour for a different cast spell or something along those lines. Then you can just go in and change the groups, or you can literally just select an individual key to change the light on. Literally all up to you, but it's definitely nice to see the per key backlighting options that we didn't see on the G213 that kind of had the 5 different zones, but the per key lighting is definitely the way to go. Now something that might be quite interesting to some players is the heat map that Logitech offers you. You could start this when you turn your PC on, for example, and it will basically track where you press throughout that entire session, where you press the most, and you can also have it display it on the keyboard itself, so the more you press it, the darker it gets in colour, and as you can see on the keyboard it goes red when you've pressed it the most. After that you get a little bit of information about where you've been spending the time on the keyboard, something quite quirky, but it's one of those things that you might use it a couple of times, then not use again. Just if you're wondering, these are the advanced settings for the keyboard. I thought I'd show you them just in case somebody wanted to see them. I know there's some people that want to see specific things, so So this might be for you. So if you watched my reviews before, you know I usually do this. I go through the keyboard, then the software, and then give you my thoughts. So on to the conclusion. Now, in terms of the actual performance of the keyboard, I found this to be, personally for me, very good. I'm not a massive competitive player though, so the keys, for one thing, might be something that don't please everyone just because of how they feel. If you're a competitive player, then you'll definitely prefer the mechanical keys just because of the response you get when they bottom out. I do like the macro keys on this keyboard though. For me, what I've been doing is remapping them to different commands that I use in Premiere Pro. So I could do, for example, save, import, export. There's lots of different things I could do in an editing point of view to make my life a little bit easier. Single commands like C and V for the razor and mouse tool, I don't really think you need to remap those. They're pretty, solid where they are. I did find though there was a little bit of adaptation time to get used to where the keyboard macros were. Going from a normal keyboard that doesn't have macros to this one was a little bit of a transition period just because of those keys that I'd find myself going to, obviously at the far left of the keyboard. Yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but having the little bits painted on the WASD keys helps as well. The G6 to G9 keys that are above the F1 to F4 keys can be a little bit close. If you do happen to try and go for those, you can hit the F1 key. You can hit the F1 to F4 pretty easily, so something to bear in mind there. Also, the 5 buttons on the left hand side might be a little bit further to get to as well if you have smaller hands. Personally, for me, I've got massive hands, so it's no problem for me, but some people might struggle a little bit. The dock, as I mentioned, that's nothing that I'm really going to use, so I'm not really going to deduct points or add points because it's pretty much non-applicable for me there. I do love the media controls. That's probably my favourite part about this keyboard. I love a volume scroll wheel, and then just the way they've presented the media keys for the start, stop, previous, next track, just really nice. I actually love the blue LED underneath as well. Some people might like that to change with the colour profile they're using on the keys, but unfortunately we can't do that. But for me, that's no issue. I do love the blue that goes with it. Some people may miss the fact that there's no USB port or even an audio pass-through. Now, personally, I'm not really too fussed. If you watch my reviews before that have those, then I've mentioned before it doesn't really make much difference to me because I never use them anyway. But some people, that might be a bit of a deal breaker, so something to consider in that aspect. I do love the RGB customization. It's nice to see that there's a vast selection you can do compared to the G213 we looked at before. Ultimately though, for me, it's got to be the wave in terms of the colour. After having to play about, some of the things look pretty cool, but for me, the classic always wins. If you wanted to run the white on this keyboard, you're going to struggle a little bit. It does go a little bit green, but as I've mentioned before, RGB is a difficult colour to produce white because you're trying to get 3 colours to match into one. So yeah, a little bit of a green tinge, but with RGB, you kind of have to expect it's not going to be perfect anyway. Overall, I do like this keyboard though. Having that feel of, going back to the G510 is something I really like. It definitely does feel, for me, at home. For the current price it's on sale at, it may not satisfy everyone's needs, but for me, I think it's a pretty good offering. So thank you for watching this video, guys. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments box down below and I'll get back to you. If you want to get one for yourself, I will put the relevant links in the description box. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. My handle is Jordan Ash Media. Also links for that in the description box as well. If you haven't subscribed already, do it! Thank you for Logitech for sending this out for me to review. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.